You are now listening to Darker Than Blue on WPFW 89.3 FM right here in Washington, D.C. I'm your host, Sean Blackman, here with Jacquie Lukman,
What
and
up?
we are your number one source for struggle, socialism, and soul. And today is Friday, June 7th, 2024, a very lovely sunny day here in Washington, D.C. Jacquie, how you feeling?
I am feeling pretty good today. I'm finally gonna get my gardening going. Finally. So
Mm.
I'm very happy about that. I got about 30 bags of soil being delivered later on, either tonight or early tomorrow morning. And then of course tomorrow will be somewhere else. But when I come home, I'm I'm gonna drag myself over to the bags and dump the bags in the yeah. I garden pretty much no matter how I feel. So between tomorrow evening and Sunday, I'll be covered in dirt and very, very happy. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We haven't heard much about the Revolutionary Garden here lately. What are you planting this season?
So this season, I am going to try the bok choy again because the bok choy did not grow last year. I think because my soil wasn't retaining enough water. So I'm going to try the bok choy again. I'm going to do rainbow Swiss chard, which I love. Not going to do so much kale because I don't really like kale that much to be growing it. I don't. So, but I am going to do collards. I love collards. I eat collards probably 2 times a week. I love it. Eat it with everything. Tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, squash. I'm going to throw some flowers in there. I might try some strawberries, peppers, all the bell peppers, the different colored ones, um, maybe some carrots, and probably a watermelon or two.
Nice. Well, if you got two melons, I hope you'll give me one of them.
I will. I shall. I'm discussing the food distribution plans with Mr. Kamathi, and Mr.
Mm.
Kamathi has to approve everyone who gets food. So, we've already approved the neighbors. And so Kamathi has told me that, I don't know who this Sean person is. I have not sniffed him yet. So I'm sure you say he's a nice man, but I will have to approve him before he gets any food. So I'm just telling you, these are his rules. This is life under the Kimathi regime. I'm just living in
Hey,
it.
it's yeah, about to say it's Kamathi's world. I'm just in it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thankful for any fresh produce that comes my way as a result. And I feel you on kale too. I don't really like kale either. Like I really tried, but like I'm cool with just about any other leafy green except for arugula, which is awful.
I don't understand people's slavish devotion to arugula.
No, they love it.
It's like, why are you trying to convince me that this tastes good? Because you
Yeah.
can't possibly believe this stuff tastes good for you. It's stop the love arugula campaign, y'all. It's really not working
It
on all of us.
and it's the sort of thing where even if it's on something, when you take it off, like you still taste it. Like it ruins whatever it's on.
It does. And I don't know where it came from. I like, growing lettuce like most gardeners do because lettuce is notoriously easy to grow. You literally just throw the seeds on the ground and just walk away and 2-3 weeks later, hey, you got a little head of lettuce. If you should do more than that. You should actually sow your seeds and put them under the dirt so that the birds don't eat them. But lettuce is really easy to grow, and for as many years as I've been doing gardening, I have not seen a whole lot of people grow arugula. I do know some people who love that stuff so much that they grow it every year, and every year they're trying to get me, hey Jacquie, come on, you want to try this homegrown arugula? It tastes so much better than what you get in the store. No, 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 it doesn't. It still tastes like arugula.
I'm gonna say something that people might think is crazy.
Uh-oh.
Personally, I would rather eat chitlins than arugula.
Oh my God. That is a bold statement, sir.
It is because here's the thing: chitlins taste like that for a reason. Right? when you taste it, well, this is a certain part of the animal. Therefore,
Yeah.
this scent and taste track, it ain't pleasant, but it makes sense. Arugula just ain't got no excuse. You know
There's
what I'm
no
saying? For
like,
real.
like what was it? I always wonder like what arugula was grown in to make it taste like that. Like was it grown in like most people don't know that in the waste sanitation plants, the end product of the waste that they can't process anymore is like this powdery, it almost looks like soil. So I'm wondering, is that what they do with that stuff? Did they just grow arugula
Right.
in the waste product?
It
In the
sure tastes like it.
result of them, because there's no reason for arugula to be that nasty, and I don't know how people eat it and cilantro and coriander. What I don't understand what's going on with people's taste buds, where like things that taste like tin can soap and indescribable rotting things in a leaf taste good.
Now I'm not gonna lie, I can do cilantro.
I don't understand
I can
how.
do cilantro, yeah.
Oh,
It just I don't have. I think it's a genetic thing or something to where like it tastes like soap, but like I don't have that. Like it tastes fine. It
and
adds
see,
a freshness to what
a
you eat. Yeah,
freshness. This is
yeah.
it's like Irish
It's
Spring fresh. What? And to say it tastes like soap is bad because I mean soap smells pretty good, and it
yeah.
doesn't taste terrible. But man, cilantro just tastes terrible. I don't. It's got to be genetic because people are like, oh, it tastes like tin cans and soap. I'm like, that's polite. I wish it tasted like that, but that's not
Well,
what I get.
we're hating on leafy greens on today's show,
That's
but yeah, of course. Excuse me. Of
mhm.
course, tomorrow, Jackie, here in Washington D.C., we're going to be having a demonstration down at the White House at noon. And, the theme of the demonstration is that, we are the red line. We're telling
Right.
the Biden administration that we are the red line. And this is different than some of the other, mass marches and things that we've been doing over the last 2 months in solidarity with Palestine. But as people know, recently Joe Biden said that Rafah, a city in Gaza, is a red line, meaning that if Israel invaded Rafah, then there would be some consequence from the United States, the main sponsor of apartheid Israel. And it was supposed to be this thing of, cutting weapons and aid and things like that. Well, Israel invaded Rafah, and of course, nothing happened.
Right. Right.
There were no repercussions. There was no consequences. And Joe Biden made it clear that basically his red line was a lie, that he never had any intention of reining in Israel in any real way, because if he did, he would simply just stop the flow of billions of dollars in aid and weapons and all of that. And so it in terms of the red line, we've decided that the people will establish a red line. So
Mm.
we're all showing up tomorrow. We're going to be wearing red. We're going to be out at the White House in a show of force, and to basically stand and say that we are the real red line. We're the real voice of conscience and peace, and wanting to bring an end to war and genocide here in the U.S. because it doesn't exist in the U.S. government. Matter of fact, people may be familiar. People may know that we mentioned on the show a couple weeks ago there was a people's conference for Palestine in Detroit, and
Mhm.
at that conference, Representative Rashida Tlaib spoke, and she was being just for speaking at that conference, she was being attacked for sharing space with quote terrorists and things like this. And so, we know that when you do anything that gestures towards peace in the U.S. government. It's not something that you can do and just get away with. I mean, people may remember it's been a couple years ago at this point, but the Congressional Progressive Caucus, they published this letter suggesting like a shift in U.S. aid to Ukraine, not
Mm.
even saying to end it,
Right.
right? But the idea that Washington had to do anything different in Ukraine was so offensive to Democrats, specifically to liberals, that these people were roundly attacked, and they came up with some excuse about why they even said. I think they blamed it on the intern or something. Just pretty cowardly stuff.
Right.
But I think that tells us a lot about the character of the U.S. government, that a person is treated as though they are wrong. Matter of fact, people are attacked for even suggesting something that approaches peace. You know what I mean? And so, since we live in such a warlike, blood-soaked, imperialist country and society, and since we can't rely on the Joe Bidens and the Donald Trumps of the world to have real red lines where people's lives matter, then we're making the statement that we're going to be the red line. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I keep thinking about, Jacquie, is it's just, you have to wonder how much Joe Biden thought these things through, because he knew very well, and his administration knew very well, that they had no intention of doing anything should the Netanyahu regime penetrate into Rafah. And the only reason that Biden even pretends to care, the only reason he makes any of these token gestures towards Palestine, is because he wants to try to salvage some votes for November. But like the things that you're doing, and the things that you're doing don't work. Like that, what was that? What they call it, a aid port or something like that.
The little skinny pier that,
that
was
pier
washed away by the waves the first time.
It crumbled into the ocean in like 9 minutes. And so the stuff that you do fails because you never meant for it to succeed. And the things you say don't come to fruition because you never meant them to begin with.
Right.
But yet we're still expected to invest the time and energy to go and vote for a quote unquote lesser evil. Yeah. And I don't know about you, Jacquie, but I'm used to a very different vibe in the United States during an election year. Like, usually during an election year, that's all that anyone is talking about. It's 100% campaigning, and all this money is being spent. There's all these things, but we haven't seen any of that. It doesn't even feel like an election year, even though we all know that there's an election coming in November. You know what I mean? And so it I think sort of evidences a strange political moment that we're in the United States, where imperialism's on the decline. We've got these different contradictions within different wings of not only the U.S. ruling class, but even the international ruling class, because we can sense a certain divisions even just between the U.S. government and Benjamin Netanyahu. And I believe that Netanyahu is set to actually come and speak here in the U.S. Excuse me, I want to say it's the 23rd. I believe originally it was the 13th, but I think it's been moved. Someone can fact check me on that.
Now.
Oh, July 24th. Okay. Yeah, and so this is all happening amongst what I would describe as a political crisis that's deepening here in the U.S. And we shouldn't forget about the political stakes for Netanyahu as well. Someone who's facing a lot of corruption charges, and even within the Netanyahu government, there's some word that certain people will plan to break off if the government doesn't maneuver in certain ways. And so it's just the instability that we're seeing creep throughout imperialism at this point. And I'm wondering what you think about that, Jacquie, because, we don't know what's going to happen in November, but it's clear that, Biden trying to do the same thing that happened last time and the same thing that they tried to do with Hillary. And the only thing that they're highlighting is the fact that they are literally not Donald Trump.
Right.
I just don't know if that's going to pan out the way that the Democrats think it will. But I'm just sort of curious what you think this says about kind of the political moment we're in the U.S. and what do you think this portends here for the coming period?
I actually like that we are not experiencing that hyper intense election season kind of, with the ads all over the place. Well, I don't watch network television anymore anyway, but heck, even campaign ads and other ads are showing up now on streaming services. So you can't get away from the political ads. And we have not seen a lot of those yet. Now, look, it's just July or June rather. So we've got a couple months before all of the money that these people are spending on their campaigns start to show up on what we're regularly watching on television or on streaming services or whatever. But, you know, Biden saying the things, saying, oh, we're giving aid to because and we're building this little flimsy port that it's not even a port. I don't even know what to call that thing that they just took a bunch of sand and just kind of dumped it at the end of the beach and were surprised when it collapsed. So then they built it again. It looks the same way as it did before. Who knows? Biden is also announcing that he's forgiving some more student loan debt, or at least going to attempt to. He's doing everything he can to try to get people to vote for him, because for the first time, I think in at least more than a decade, since before the Obama administration, I think people are finally waking up to the fact that there's not a lot of difference between these two parties, or at least people realize there's not a lot of difference between these two candidates, because the arguments people are making that the Democrats or that Biden is somehow better than Trump, reality itself proves that very wrong. Like, it's very hard to listen to the discourse that we hear from a lot of the Black misleadership class or Black liberals or the petit bourgeois Black class about, Black folks need to vote because, and we need to vote for the lesser of the two evils to move us forward even a little bit, because that would be better than voting for the obvious evil in a Republican or Donald Trump. But when the lesser of the two evils is funding and fueling a genocide, how does that person become the lesser evil of the person who has done some really horrible things, has committed crimes, but is not now actively funding and fueling a genocide? Now, this is not to say that Donald Trump wouldn't have done the same thing, but that's the point, Sean. He has said he would have done the same thing, and somehow Joe Biden is still like the lesser evil, according to a lot of folks in the Black misleadership class who are begging Black folks to vote for Biden to save us from Trump. And a lot of Black people, particularly younger Black voters, are looking at Joe Biden right now, supporting this genocide being committed by the Zionists, the Palestinians, and folks are saying, how is a genocidaire a lesser evil from anybody else, from anybody else? So this election cycle, I think, feels different because there's not just one genocide going on. People are realizing that there has been more than one genocide going on, and people are angry, I think, that the Democrats have been just as complicit in the genocide, the ongoing genocide in the Congo, as well as supporting this genocide against Palestinians. And people are just simply saying, I'm not going to vote for genocide. How about that? I'm not going to vote for racism, sexism, bigotry, anti-immigrant hostility. That I'm not going to vote for that. But I'm not going to vote for genocide either. So guess where that leaves me? Not voting for this system. And people are great with that. And I'm happy that we're at that point, Sean, because I don't see any other way for people to have realized the need for a third party in this country, and in a country that actually has a very robust history of third parties actually running and making a difference in it. So yes, it's a very weird presidential campaign moment. But I think in the context of the change that we're seeing, like you pointed out, that the empire is declining, great. I'm glad that there is this crisis in the voting apparatus and culture of this country, because I'm tired of having folks tell us that we have to vote for anybody who's not a Republican, because our ancestors died for the right to vote. No, they didn't. Our ancestors fought and died for liberation, for freedom, to make choices for ourselves and decide for ourselves what we want, what is best, and what is needed for us, and to have the freedom to choose what we want and what we don't. That is what our ancestors died for. And in that vein, by choosing not to vote for the lesser of two evils, I'm absolutely walking in the shoes of my ancestors. And I wish these people would stop with this narrative that, oh, if you don't vote, you're disrespecting your ancestors. I think instead, Sean, that every time one of us goes to the poll and votes for anybody in either one of these parties that really does not do much for our people in advancing actual liberation, I think when we do that, our ancestors are really angry at us, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, our ancestors didn't die for the right to us to vote. They certainly didn't die for us, didn't die for the right for us to vote for Democrats. They died fighting white supremacy. Like you said, they were fighting a liberation struggle. And the vote as a basic democratic right was simply a way to strike down what was literally an American apartheid. And so the reason it was fought for so passionately is because it was just one of the more, sort of obvious and egregious manifestations of a white supremacist control. And and I always say, I believe that our ancestors' lives were worth a lot more than the Democrat Party. Their lives and their blood is worth a lot more than the mere act of walking into a booth every 4 years and casting a ballot from some ruling class figure. And this is me. I'm taking the long view of Black history in this sense, understanding what our people have done in this country and elsewhere throughout history. That just doesn't that doesn't pass the sniff test, if you will. And a lot of this stems not only from political cowardice, frankly, but also just from a poor grasp of history. I mean, there's just, this country thinks matter of fact, no, this country talks a lot about the 50s and the 60s and the civil rights era. And it talks about this as like a proud moment in this country's history. And without question, it was a valiant struggle, but the sort of real politics and the real facts of so much of how that period played out and what led up to it has been completely obscured. I mean, especially the more radical elements. And a lot of people don't know that that there was a March on Washington that was proposed before the one that happened. You know what I mean? And so all of these sorts of things lead to these sort of politically backward ideas that we're discussing. You know what I mean? And you mentioned the thing about student loan debt and him, Biden doing something. I mean, to me, it's just like too little, too late. Like there are so many basic things that the Biden administration could have done well before this point that would have sealed his victory in November. He could have forgiven student loan debt completely. He could have codified Roe into law. Once Roe was overturned, there were several things that Biden could have done to actually protect abortion rights. As those who have listened to us in the past have heard us list those out. They could have raised wages. They could have done something about healthcare. They could have done something about racist voter suppression. There's just so many, they could have actually, protected the LGBTQ community instead of, either looking the other way or even sometimes introducing harmful legislation against them and not doing anything to this right-wing violent campaign to try to stomp out this whole community. And so, we could be here all day just talking about it. And in fact, if Biden just did one of those things and could consistently point to it and say, well, this is what I did, that might still be enough to actually clinch it. But as we sit here today, what reason do people have to vote for Joe Biden? You know what I mean? Like, what is really the motivation? What is the positive thing they can say? Because I'm gonna tell you, just as I'm out, out and about having conversations with people, what I hear from people who plan on voting on Biden, of course, this is just my experience. A lot of them, they say some version of, yeah, I know Biden sucks, but we have to vote for Biden so we don't get Trump. And sometimes people will literally just go, I know.
Right.
But we got to vote for Biden. And so people, even Biden quote supporters, and I don't even know if they're just really Biden supporters or just simply anti-Trump. It seems to me that a lot of Democrats are just anti-Trump. Now, some of them are genuinely just for Biden. I don't know what kind of mental gymnastics they do to get there. Hey, but they do exist. You know what I'm saying? But I just don't think it. I just think it tells us something that there's this strong begrudging feeling amongst people who who plan to cast a vote for Biden simply because they think they have no choice, or because they think they're staving off the worst case scenario. You know what I mean? And so what gets me about it, and I feel like I've said this a million times, and I'm sure I'll say it a million more before it's all said and done, is that if Joe Biden does not win in November, you mark my words, it will be everybody else's fault. Okay? It will be the fault of Arabs and Muslim voters. It will be the fault of young people who are driving the Palestine protest. It'll be Black folks' fault. I'm sure it'll be Black men's fault at some point. You got to blame us.
Totally going to be y'all's fault. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Who knows? Maybe it'll be Russia or China's fault again. I mean, we already hear these absurd narratives like, somehow the Palestine protests are pleasing to Russia or directed by Russia. I mean, just the most absurd things. I mean, I really think we should take note of how, imperialism kind of defers to this. It's like they defer to saber rattling just to kind of, stave off any real criticism. And so the issue is not that the U.S. is funding and facilitating a genocide and has been doing so for years. That's not the issue.
Right.
It's the fact that one of these countries that we deem as an enemy is just causing trouble, and they're just stirring up the young people because apparently all these people in the U.S. are too stupid to know when an issue actually has an impact on them some kind of way or an effect. And, this is what is propagated constantly in the pro-imperialist media and certainly from the White House itself. And I think it just shows that this is a system that over and over and over and over again, in so many ways, is showing all of us that it has no solutions for our problem. It doesn't have it, The only solution that it has is every 4 years you can vote for this guy who we're gonna say is slightly less awful than this other guy. Because that's basically what we're told. Right. And so it really just seems like that whole line, that whole narrative, that whole trick bag that they try to put us in, it just doesn't feel like it has the same vitality as it once did. I think it will likely still continue to be utilized, probably as long as this electoral system is set up the way that it is. But, the average person in this country who is doing worse and worse as time goes on, it's funny, we see all of these reports about how supposedly the economy is getting so much better and how unemployment numbers are getting so much better. It's like, the average, like the rank and file person in this country, I just think is not feeling that in their pocket where it really matters. I think actually it's the exact opposite. And people are feeling more and more squeezed the more time goes on. And we're not hearing any solution coming from either of the major parties about this. And so I think what that means, Jackie, is we're in a moment where I think a lot of people either they don't think there can be an alternative, or they want an alternative and don't know where to find one. And see, that's where we come in as organizers. and use that as an opportunity to build the movement, bring more folks in the fold to really enrich and deepen our work, and show how the only real solution is for there to be an entirely different system.
Mm-hmm.
Because this system has shown us time and again that no matter what form it claims to take, no matter what names it tries to use,
Mm-hmm.
as long as the fundamental sort of aspects of capitalism are in place in the way that it is, this is how it's going to play out. The wealthy will always hold that it will always sort of hold that political power in that
Mm-hmm.
way, as long as you have a system that is designed for the enrichment of a few to the detriment of the many. And as I've mentioned before, this is not an accident. This literally goes back to the very roots of the country itself, when it was understood that direct democracy would threaten the political power of the wealthy. And so a political system that favored the wealthy was constructed from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And see, something as simple as this is not well known or understood amongst American people.
Right.
And we understand that when you're in the wealthiest and most expansive and sophisticated empire that the world has ever seen, propaganda and miseducation are crucial. They're crucial to maintain because you
Yeah.
have to convince the populace that this is the only legitimate system that has been or ever could be, or at the very least, they have to feel that there's nothing that can be done about the system.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we don't like it, well, there's nothing we can do. So why bother even thinking about it, sort of thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so it's all these layers that we gotta try to get at and unravel a little as organizers to help folks understand and see that there is an alternative, but we have to fight to actually build it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And very often what we do in that organizing is to show people the examples where it has worked, where changing the system in the country you live in, shrugging off, breaking really the yoke of capitalism off of the people, and creating a bulwark, being a bulwark against imperialist aggression, that has actually worked. People have done that in other countries. But Sean, we don't travel nowhere. Right? This is, this country, when you were talking about the propaganda machine in this country and how this government is able to convince people in this country that this system is the best in the world and it's the only real democracy on the planet. And then I realized, wait a minute, there are 330 million people in this country. 330 million. And that was from the last census. So that number is not exactly accurate, but let's keep it at around 300 million. For a country to be able to convince at least half of that population, we'll say that half of that population is the voting public, the folks who are registered to vote, the adults, everybody over 18 who is also registered to vote. That's maybe half, and I'm being generous because there's really not that many. This country, this government, this system has convinced all of those people that they must continue to prop up the same system that does not do anything for them, that lies to them about the state of the economy in this country. Whenever the news is on and these people are talking about, as you said, Sean, the economy is improved, they're always talking about the CEOs and the business owners. They're not talking about the workers, right? About the economy improving, because they don't care if the workers can afford, bread and mac and cheese for their kids and cheese and bread at the same time at the grocery store. They're talking about how much profit the CEOs are making. And if the CEOs are increasing their profits, but the workers can't afford rent and food at the same time, then people don't care. Because the success lies in how the rich are faring. Because, Sean, as you pointed out, that's what this country was based on. So people, because the education system is garbage, and is nothing but a propaganda machine for the system, the same system. People don't know that this country was not, it wasn't a Christian nation. I mean, the so-called founding fathers, they even said it wasn't a Christian nation. It's not a direct democracy. It wasn't intended to be a direct or not even a real representative democracy. Um, and it is a government that was built to benefit the rich. Sir, he's having heat issues back there. So, people really have been indoctrinated all our lives in this country into continuing to support and honestly love and be devoted to an electoral system that perpetuates our oppression, because neither party does anything to improve the conditions of the people in its base, the working class and poor people in its base, to improve their material conditions, because they can't do that. Because then all of a sudden, if all of these people who aren't going to vote for me anymore because now their lives are good and all their needs are met, what do they need me for? So yeah, they're not going to meet our needs, because they need us to continue to be afraid of someone and something that's not them in order to keep voting for them. And that is all they have. And I think more people are realizing what a ripoff this system is. And they are realizing that the lies they've been told about other countries like Cuba and Venezuela and Russia and China, and other countries that have some type of mix of socialist system and a little bit of capitalism or whatever, but the needs of the people in those countries are being met. People are realizing the reason they were lied to about those countries, that they're all evil and they're enemies of the United States, is because we were never supposed to find out that we have the power to change the system in this country, just like people in those other countries did. And they have a lot less resources than we do. And look at what they were able to do. We were never supposed to find that out. But more people know, and now more people are doing what this system has never wanted us to do, which is reach out to and connect with these people and organize internationally against this system. So, I mean, resistance is going to find a way, right? To fight the growing repression, even as the repression increases. So, this is a fight we have to be in. And no matter how much people want to make it easy by just, oh, I can fight the system by voting, at some point everybody's going to have to realize that that's not true. And they are going to have to decide which side of the barricades you are on. And sometimes that might be absolutely literal. And I understand that's the one thing that people are very afraid of. But what revolution has ever happened in any other way, other than maybe the Grenada revolution, right? Maybe the one in Ghana. But no, this system that is so violent and evil and established itself and grew itself off of unconscionable violence is not going to go silently into that good night without a little bit of a dose of its own medicine.
Yeah, and when you begin to talk about the need for revolutionary change in this country, I mean, a thing that you run into a lot is, basically people saying, well, oh, that's not possible. You know what I mean? Like there's something about this system that has, it severely constrains people's political imagination. But, but what I always point out to people is like, well, how do you figure that it's impossible? There have been revolutions all throughout history. You know what I mean? So many that we can that we can point to and take different lessons from and things like this. And so when what people are responding to when they say that, I think is that same miseducation and propagandization that we were speaking to earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another example of what I consider this sort of deepening political crisis here in the U.S. is this whole excuse me, this whole Donald Trump case that just wrapped up, and you know, he had a guilty verdict. And of course, as usual, the liberals were celebrating and throwing themselves a party and stuff like that. Even though, I don't know, I've never seen any group of people who get so excited over like victories aren't actually victories, right? It's just like when Trump had that mugshot before, you know what I mean? And they're laughing and making jokes. And I remember Jamal Bowman like made a TikTok of him like laughing at the picture of Trump in the background. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, if you've been paying attention to Trump at all, it's obvious he's been building this narrative that he's being persecuted by the Democrats, which you all are helping a lot with. And so he's obviously going to use that to sort of bolster that claim and use it, you know, to sort of build his campaign. And that's exactly what he did. So he wasn't hurt by that. You know what I mean? And similarly, people, when this verdict came down, people are acting like he was going to get put under the jail or something. Like, obviously, nothing is like really going to happen to him. You know what I'm saying? And but see, this is a part of a historical pattern, I think, because if people notice throughout history, when capitalist politicians in the U.S. get in trouble or they get impeached or they get indicted, it's usually for like second or third rate offenses, but they don't get any accountability or any punishment for like the real crimes that they committed as an actual head of state. You know what I mean? Like whatever happened to Trump when he had Qasem Soleimani assassinated unilaterally? You know what I mean? Or when Trump dropped a bomb on Syria.
Right. And bragged about it. And then what did the Democrats say about him when he did it? That he looked more presidential than he ever had before. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that came from Van Jones, didn't it?
I forget. It wouldn't surprise me. And he probably, if it was Van Jones, he was probably crying while he said it. That's all he do is start weeping at it. Anyway, but I almost forgot. Trump also illegally seized the Venezuelan embassy right here in D.C.
That's right.
You know, they shut off the utilities and all of that, even though the bills were paid. Like that was a real violation of like another country's sovereignty, and something that I'm sure other embassies in other countries took note of. You know what I mean? And so my point is that Trump, he hasn't had even a day in court over any of that. But because he paid hush money to this lady that he supposedly had an affair with when he was married, that's supposed to mean something. Like it's, you know, it just shows how empty like the political theater is in this country. Like there'll be such a big deal. Anything that can be construed as a swipe at Trump or a dig at Trump or something to undermine Trump is sort of upheld as this wonderful thing. But you know, it's this image that they use all the time. It's like you're throwing a dirt clod at a tank. Like it has no impact.
Right.
You know, so outside of this temporary moment of feeling like you, I don't know, got one over on Trump or whatever, you didn't actually harm him in any way, certainly not politically. And so his chances of becoming president are still quite good, I think. You know, I don't like to be too predictive. We don't know what will happen in November, but Biden has a lot to worry about. And I think he's aware of that. And I think that's why we're seeing him make certain moves. You know what I mean? And but in terms of the Trump thing, I think what it shows is that, you know, particularly within our organizations, we shouldn't tie our political future or political fortunes to any of these ruling class factions. Because at the end of the day, that's all they are. They are factions that represent the interests of the capitalists and not us. And so this, you know, like petty back and forth thing that Democrats and Republicans do, this whole show that they put on for us to make it look like, I don't know, there's some kind of real governance or democracy going on. That's all just for show. But this brings us right back to what we were discussing earlier, the importance of that mass movement element. You know what I mean? Where the people who are really affected by these things will come together and really fight for all of this and more. You know what I mean? And I think that it's going to be so important that we continue to make that point to people, because we're in a time where it's so easy to be cynical and discouraged, and you encounter that. Like you have some people, like you meet people sometimes and they just kind of give up. It's almost like they don't, like they're aware that all these things are happening, but they've been made to feel so hopeless and so helpless and so small and so ineffective that they don't see the point in even trying to do something. So this is just this is a part of what we got to combat as organizers, to show that there is something that we can do. And throughout history, throughout some of the most difficult and torturous moments in the history of oppressed people, folks have been able to organize to really change things, and we should do the same. You know, all it really is, as ever, is a question of organization. What are we organized to do? What are we organized to take? And what are we organized to build? You see what I mean? And so that building of consciousness, I just think, is going to be so crucial in this current period, not just to inform people about the reality of what's happening in the moment, but to basically uh basically serve as a point of like encouragement, and show that like things, and to make the point that things are only hopeless if we refuse to fight.
That's right.
But as long as we resist, we are not defeated. And I think if we can communicate that to people, that will go a long way to, you know, rolling back a lot of this thinking that can demobilize and make people pessimistic about conditions.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the focus that we have on internationalism really does help, because very often, you know, when we have a teach-in or a webinar or whatever, someone will get up and say, and this really does happen every time, and I bet you it happens pretty frequently with you all too. Somebody will get up and say, well, look, you know, I can't make my ends meet here, and we have problems here. Why should we be concerned about, you know, out here in the streets all the time protesting about what's going on in another country when we don't get anything that we need here? And the reason that we organizers are internationalists is because we have to understand and explain to our people that what this government does overseas directly impacts what they don't do for us here, right? And it's not a matter of this government can't do two things at once, but we should be helping our people understand that it's not that the government cannot afford to pay for our health care and education and housing, and this government can do all of that and continue to do whatever else without a problem. But that's not how these decisions, these political decisions, are presented, are there? Because whenever there's a demand for Medicare for all, what does the government, regardless of who is in office, tell the people? We can't afford Medicare for all. It costs too much. That's ridiculous. We cannot do that. But when it comes to fueling or funding a war, there's never an argument about what cannot be afforded. And that is like the simplest example of why we need to pay attention to what this government does overseas, because at the same time we are asking for our human rights and our human needs to be met here, demanding it. In fact, the government that we are still voting for, because we're trying to vote for the lesser of two evils, the government says, okay, great, vote for me, but I'm still not going to give you anything you need. But I also don't want you to say anything about how many people we're killing around the world with your tax dollars that we're not going to put back into providing anything for you and your families. These issues are connected, and it is organizers who are responsible for conveying this information to our people so that they can understand how connected they still are to everybody else around the world, because of the fact that it's our tax dollars. that are funding so much misery that this government is carrying out in our collective name.
Yeah, for sure. And you're listening to Darker Than Blue and WPFW. I just want to let folks know we are getting ready for our demonstration tomorrow. So if you hear any rustling and things in the background, that's just movement happening literally.
Yeah,
so
a lot of
don't worry about that. Yeah, but I think what you're saying is correct, Jackie. And I'm just checking out our chat here on YouTube on the Black Power Media page. I want to say shout out to everybody that's in the chat. And yeah, like you say, I mean, these are contradictions that this country pretends to have solutions to, but whenever these so-called solutions are put into action, they never seem to have any real impact on the masses of folks that they were meant to help. And then, the politicians can point to these things and say, well, don't you remember when I did X, Y, and Z? Well, it's like, no, I remember you made a big deal out of doing
right.
this, but it didn't actually help. And so it just really feels in so many ways like a lot of these same old tricks simply aren't working the way that they used to. And so as we continue to see conditions worsen in this country in a number of ways, I've always been of the opinion that, there's going to come a breaking point. There's going to come a time when this system, we won't just talk about this system crumbling, it'll actually crumble.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, when that happens, where is that rubble going to land?
Right.
And how prepared are we to deal with that, to actually build something new?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't, well, then we'll just be suffering the consequences of this thing that has collapsed on top of us, but not, plant the seeds of a new system. And so as we look at all of the different issues that face us in the current moment, I think we also have to have an eye towards the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is difficult for a lot of people because things can just seem like they're so bad. And like every day there's some new tragedy, some new issue that we have to deal with. I honestly think a lot of people have a problem in this country under this system, even conceiving of a future, because I think they're afraid of what a future may even look like if things continue in this way. But what we have to communicate as organizers is that things don't have to be this way.
That's right.
And that the way things are is the direct result of this system. It's a direct result of the actions of this ruling class, but also any benefit or any progress that poor working oppressed people have made throughout history was made precisely because they fought for it. Mm-hmm. They didn't sort of sit around and wait for the game to come to them, if you will. They dared to invent the future, to borrow a phrase. And so this is precisely what we will have to do in this coming period, mm-hmm. if we want to actually see some shift. Because the fact is, we were talking earlier about how we're in an election year and it doesn't really feel like it. But I think we should also highlight that, Trump and Biden are two of the most unpopular candidates for president, mm-hmm. that we've seen, even more so than Clinton. You know what I mean? And that was pretty bad. And so when we're in a country that tells the world that it's the greatest country that ever existed, and it has such a thoroughgoing democracy, and yet overwhelmingly there's like this malaise over the choices over who's going to lead the country for this next period, I just think it helps to show just the lie of American democracy that it is. It just sort of really exposes that, something that I think has been apparent for a while, but I think things have reached a point where it's pretty undeniable. And so as ever, I think it's up to us as a movement and as a class to really decide how we're going to organize to combat these things, because if we leave our future in the hands of a Biden or a Trump, I think we know what we get. But we're gonna leave it there for today here on Darker Than Blue on WPFW 89.3 here in Washington D.C. Stay tuned for news and views with Garland Nixon coming up next, and we will see you next time. Peace.
All right. Oops. Alrighty, y'all. Thank you so much, you all, for watching us here on Darker Than Blue. I can take my little Darker Than Blue thingy off now. Let's see. Put my background. Yep, there we go. And put my back. Uh-oh, not that one. All right, well, it doesn't entirely work right. I think I have to replace that. That's right. I forgot. We have a new StreamYard, so I do have to replace that. Oopsie. Hey, y'all. How are y'all doing? It's been a week. It has been a week. Lord have mercy. Black Myths is on at 6 o'clock. I do not want y'all to miss Black Myths because I don't want to miss Black Myths. But it's been a week. It's been rough. This has been one of those oh, please leave me alone weeks. But I got through it. And, this is going to be a busy, busy month, just like every other month. It's been really, really busy, really crazy busy. I was hoping to have a little break this weekend to do my gardening and get my garden established. But we've got the big demonstration tomorrow. So this is what happens when you organize. Sometimes things happen at the last minute and you got to move stuff. I know it has been a while since I've done a double feature. It's been a bit, and I will get back to it. I'm trying to establish for myself a decent schedule, because I'm involved in another project that is going to be a long-term thing that I really have to stick to in order to see it through. And I'm very excited about it. I'll tell you about it later. Can't tell you about it right now. But yeah, there's a lot going on. And I'm just trying to find a way to set myself up to have some good, disciplined habits in order to get this done. So, yeah. So tonight, no double feature, just a little chat for you all. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. It has been a while, I know, and definitely going to look at the schedule here on the platform to see where I can do some extra shows, because what we don't want is to step on each other's broadcasts. And I try not to do that. So definitely got to find another slot that is unoccupied so we can have our second shows. Yes, 2Fs, you have guessed, I am writing a book. Yes, I am finally doing the thing that Abdus announced a couple of years ago, and I'm writing a book. So yeah, it's a very big thing for me. So that's what's going on with me. Mr. Kimathi and I are having a good time getting to know each other. He is basically, he has taken over the run of the house. He's allowed to kind of roam around whenever he feels like. I have to get a patio door insert for him with the doggy door. So he can just go on out, in and out, and I could still have the door secured in the back, even though I have a backyard still. Yeah, we are having a good time in here. He's a very good dog. I am trying to get used to whatever this transition period is for me. There's a lot of stuff being brought up, probably that I've never dealt with. Since, I won't say childhood, but certainly since my mom died in 96, around that time. No, the guy, oh, wait, what happened? Oh, so Afra Singh's asked, is the guy that just left the one from Lukman Nation? No, Sean is the host. We are both the former host and co-host of By Any Means Necessary on Radio Sputnik. doing our show on WPFW now. Sean is not a member of, he's not a member of Lukman Nation. No. um, so Sean Blackman is a member of Party for Socialism and Liberation and the Answer Coalition, and we organize together quite a lot. So that's who Sean Blackman is, Sean the Voice Blackman. And it is 6 o'clock. Black Myths is coming on. I am going to get out of the way. I will see you all hopefully someday this week as I try to work out another slot for streaming. But I'll definitely see you next Friday at 5 o'clock once again for Darker Than Blue. And we'll see you all soon. Peace. Thanks so much, you all.